sales management or selling using Dynamics CRM. As per normal, per usual, what we'll do before we start is that you can ask your questions through the chat window. If you make it specifically for me, then if there's a question that's more specific for you, I can see that uniquely. But if you have one that you want me to address for everyone, or that you would like me to cover, then just put it in there and I'll come back to those questions towards the end of the session. Or alternatively, if you wanted to send me an email with your questions and something you wanted to talk outside of the session, then just please send that to my email address or respond to your invitation. Alternatively, use benny.olsen@esavvy.com.au, as you can see on the screen. I will mute the audio just to make sure that we have a good quality sound for everyone, and we are going to publish a link to the recording after the session. So before we actually start off, did anyone have any kind of questions from last session that we had? I know, Paul, you didn't attend, but before your time, if you will. But has anyone got any questions before we go in there? I'll still have you guys all unmuted, so you can just ask it through the phone if you like. None so far? Okay, that's all right. That's fine. So I'm going to put you all on mute, so just use the chat window there if you have anything you'd like to ask, or bring up towards the end. Okay. So today's agenda, I'm going to go through and outline the sales process in Dynamics CRM. Then going to follow through and start it off from the lead qualification process, walking us through the opportunity management side in the system, and then cover off a little bit about how we can manage goals and do some reporting and tracking in the system. Towards the end, I'm going to, and probably throughout most of the session, I'm going to be using the Outlook interface so you get to see and experience how this can actually integrate and work through using your Outlook add-ins. I'll also have a quick chat with you guys about the mobile devices and how we can work with that. So just as a quick review for what we covered last session, we talked about the base system of Dynamics CRM, where it's based around your accounts and your contacts, and the other modules that it covers, including the sales system, the marketing side of the system, a case management system, so a support or a help desk system, if you will, and also service delivery system where you can actually have a full customer service, like if you have people going out on site to carry out work, you can see that. In the middle, we see the integrations that are there natively out of the box to Outlook 2010, even going down to 2003 and 2007, which I'm going to be using for the majority of the time today. Also, that we're capable of working and integrating with SharePoint and integrating that straight into the system, as well as the Office line of products, as well as with your mobility devices through iPads, Android, Windows, as well as BlackBerry. We did cover a bit about the growth capabilities of the system, how we can use the marketplace and other capabilities in the system to extend, integrate, and enhance our system. Today the focus is going to be on the sales module here, so we're sort of leaving the general focus on accounts and contacts that we covered in our last session, and we're going to spend most of the time here focusing on how we can use the system for selling. And just as a reminder again for you who are part of the trial process here for Dynamics CRM, to bear in mind in thinking about the trial in terms of setting SMART goals for your trials, making sure that what you're trying to achieve here in the 30-day trial that you have to evaluate the product for free is to make sure that it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, and treating the system like you're live. Use your real data and start tailoring it and getting used to and making sure that it's going to work for you. And obviously, since you're attending these bootcamp sessions, I can definitely tick off that last one for you guys. So I believe we have another person joined us, which is good timing. So in here today, as I mentioned, we are going to go through mostly for the sales module here. At this point, I'd just like to point out as well, with May here, eSavvy is actually providing all clients who go live in Mail with a special offer, where 2 of our solutions out of our packages here are going to be available for anyone who signs up in the month of May and puts their credit card details. The only thing that is required to take this offer up is that, one, that you do go live and submit the credit card details for the end of May, that we assign eSavvy as your partner of record, and that you're prepared to complete a Microsoft solution survey about the 2 solutions there. So that's a decent value for not much effort from your end if you're interested. I'll actually use, we used the Australian localizations last time. This time I'll actually show you very briefly the account visualization tool that we got as well, which can be quite handy from a sales point of view. So now let's jump into the sales process here in Dynamics CRM. Really important and to the very heart of the solution is the flexibility of the sales process. What you see here are the main components, which starts with basically what I like to term a vanilla sales process, which you start with a sales inquiry, whether it be from a web lead, from Outlook, whether it's been imported through an Excel spreadsheet or whether you've manually entered it into the system. You then go through the process of qualifying this, so whether these people are actually properly interested, and I'll take you through that process. Or if they're not interested and we're seeing that they're just not the right type of customer for our business and we're not the right company for their money, so to speak, then you have that option in the beginning to gather up the information and the statistics about our lead analysis information. So once we qualify this through using the process, then you generate an opportunity in the system. From this, in this opportunity, you put in forecasting information. You can assign products based on a price list. You can also put in the communications against the opportunity and the like. Should you wish to, you have the option of producing a quote from the system, generating an order, an invoice before you close this opportunity off as either a won deal or as a lost deal. Now, key thing with this process is the flexibility here. So whereas I've shown the entire process here, if you like to, you can start at any point you like. So you could start straight away just generating an invoice based on the system and attach products to that invoice without necessarily creating a lead to start off with. There are benefits, as you will see soon, by starting from the lead side, but it's not mandatory by any means. So from this is the sort of the starting point and the summary, I guess, of the entire process. So now let's go in and look at this from the system's point of view. So we are now looking at straight in my inbox right here, and as a normal salesperson, you would have a number of emails coming your way, and when we're looking at working with a customer and saying here's an interest in one of the products, then we can start from this point. So I'm going to actually start here, select Kelvin in this particular case, and use him as my starting point. In Outlook, as we saw in our last session, you'll notice that you have an area up here which is the Outlook or the Outlook add-in regarding CRM. So when we choose to track a customer in our CRM system, we only need to click this button. As you will notice, it will relate back here to my default email address, and that's the only email address that it can synchronize with. So once we have this set up and running, that's what it's going to automatically work against. So when I go here to track Kelvin in the system, I just click on the track button, and it will now create this as a record in the CRM. What you would have noticed is that the envelope which we had previously has been replaced by 2 people, which is the indication that this is now tracked in the CRM and that this particular email is actually been imported into the CRM system. So from the sales point of view, that's the starting point. Now I have the option of actually converting this into either a sales opportunity, a sales lead, or customer service case. So in this case, because I'm going to follow the process from the lead all the way through to a closed opportunity, I'm going to start by creating a sales lead in the system. By doing that, it merely asks me to enter in the information from the email, and I'll put it in KJ Ross in this particular case. Once I put that information in, it can open the lead for me automatically when I click OK. So it's important to note that we're staying in our Outlook environment. We haven't had to go in anywhere different or anywhere scary, so to speak, when we're working with this process. So the key thing here again comes down to the closed integration. Because it's a lead, it's grabbed the information from that email that we received and populated the information for us, reducing the risk of double handling issues here. An important aspect is looking at here at the closed activities area, where we'll actually find the original source email for this lead. So anyone who actually has the ability to access this customer's record in the CRM, they don't have to do anything different to access and see that email, that source email, if they have the right to see it, than to just open up the record here. And here's the information regarding that sales lead, which can then be replied to and worked with from within here. So very simple and brief process here. As soon as I hit save on this here, we can now take it to the next level here. So I've now updated the information in this record, and let's continue on with the process. Now, when we work with a lead, quite often you will want to go through a qualification process. So what I've done in the system is to set up a standard, what's called a band qualification process, which is based around qualifying or talking to the prospect in relation to their budget, whether we have access to the decision maker, whether we verified the need, whether we've pointed out a timeline for the decision process, and we have all that information gathered. Now, you could just type that information directly to the form if you wanted to, but quite often you might have an administrative person taking that first call, and you want them to be able to do a good job at asking the right types of questions. And this is where Microsoft's dialogue capabilities comes in really handy. So in the top of the screen, you'll see that you have a dialogue button. So I've created a dialogue for us to guide us through these steps. As you can see here, I've created it called the band qualification. I select it and I click OK, and it starts up the process here. The key thing with this is that it's a user-driven process where if you have this response, then it can take you to this step, etc. In this case, I've just taken 4 simple survey steps where we're going to ask simple questions about the person and their interest and to qualify them better for us. So what you will see straight away is that when you compare this to just the information area in the actual form, here we've got one word, budget, which is not entirely useful in terms of telling us what we need to find out and what kind of information we want to gather. So when we actually have used these dialogue forms, we're able to flesh it out a lot more, where we can say assess whether there's an allocated budget for this process, and then in the tip area here, asking around the way in which they're considering implementing the product, their expectation of price, and whether budget has already been allocated or if it's in the planning stage. So in this case, it might be allocated and ready to go if the product is right. Then it takes me to the next step here. So I was just following through. I've created 4 steps, 1 for each of the section. And again, it puts down the information outlining the decision-making process. So I'll say he's an influencer. Reporting to the managing director here. And then following through the step in the process, we're looking at evaluating the needs assessed within normal program. And finally, timeline implemented before the end of the financial year. So that takes me to the end of my process here, which answers these 4 questions. But obviously you can customize this and make it go much, much further than this in the system. For me to be able to see this come in, you actually have to exit out of the actual record and then to actually come back into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump into it through the actual leads form so we can see it created. Obviously we would just normally stay in that form otherwise. So what you can see here now is that the information that I entered in through the process in the dialog has now been populated into the form with more rich information, helping us qualify in this process. Now, a second component that's quite often a common requirement when you're working with leads is that you want there to be some form of automation in the process here. So for that purpose, I've created what we call workflows, and they're the other side of the process in the system. So dialogues are the user-driven ones where you follow a prompted screen and you enter in information, but workflows are automated things. So let's say, for example, we have a standard in this organization where you want and must have them contacted within 24 hours. So you would want a task created for the person who created the lead or in the system to make sure that they've accomplished that within that time. So in this case, what I've done is to create this as an automated event, and as you also saw that I didn't actually go in to actually manually create this, the system has generated one for me, and this will also show up within my Outlook interface and for you to be able to manage here. So it's a simple matter of putting in the details and creating a workflow, and it automatically allocates the information to us. Then once you've carried that out, you mark that as completed, which helps from a reporting point of view. So a sales manager is able to see which one of my salespeople are actually following up on time within our KPIs, so to speak, for this area. So in this case, I just did that. I've gone through the process and done the bank qualification, so I can sign off of having followed my process through here. So at this point, I'm good to go, and we've qualified everything through here. Quite often with the band qualification process, you say you've got to be able to tick 3 out of the 4 boxes before we're ready to qualify this upwards. So at this point, I'm good and ready to qualify this through to an actual opportunity in the system. So I'm going to, in this point, just follow the steps through to qualify it. Obviously at this stage is where you either qualify or disqualify it. So if we knew that these guys, it wasn't going to work out, then we could specify a reason down here for why this is not going to go ahead. And this will form part of our statistics for our won/lost part of our sales activities. So in this case, we're qualifying this through to an opportunity. We're taking it to the next level where we want to enter more important information or more detailed information into it. Our lead has now been changed from a status of being an open lead to a qualified lead. And at this point, we're now ready to move into the other area. In terms of leads, if you for some reason need to reactivate a lead, so you talk to someone but their interests start failing, something's gone on, the timeline has changed, for example, and you need to reactivate this as a lead, you can go and do that against this particular lead in the system, which will allow you to continue working with it as a lead at this point. But at this point, because we've qualified it through, you'll see that it's all grayed out. Before I move on, I just want to bring up one quick thing in regards to working with this and the integration with the marketing module, which we'll cover in another session, and that's the notion of using lead sources. Lead sources are ways for us to designate and seeing where we're getting the different leads from. So it could be from marketing campaigns, it can be from referrals and the like. And in the system, when we go down the bottom, you can see that we have a source campaign area. So if I had a source campaign that this came from, for example, marketing could have created these leads from us from a trade show and distributed amongst the salespeople so that when we qualify these through the list, we're able to track this all the way through. Then using the source campaign is the key component in getting what we call full closed loop marketing. Once we track that, that will stay with this lead. When you qualify it, it will follow through to the opportunity. When we close an opportunity as a one deal, it will then show off that as well. If you generate an order, that will also come across there. So when you're looking at this from a marketing reporting point of view, you then have that ability to track dollars spent on marketing investment versus orders carried through the system as a consequence of that, so you can see the actual profitability of the individual marketing campaigns. So an important aspect in the sales and marketing relationship. Now we've closed off this lead as a qualified one, so we're going to move through to the next stage in the process. At this point, I'm going to move into the opportunity side down here in the sales module to pick it up. So you can see here's our KJ Ross opportunity that we qualified. When I open it up from within here, I'm now able to start working with this in a little bit more of a serious fashion. Now, the same thing can be true of opportunities as they are of leads, that you can have activities associated with them. I'll come back and show you that in a minute. So on the creation of an opportunity, we might have a specific set sales process that we say has to be followed through. You could also have different dialogues, etc. here, but I'll show you that in a minute what I created. But let's first have a closer look at this. So in here, it still carries the topic from our email, so we might want to change this project for email marketing, for example. You can put in some more detailed description about this particular opportunity, and then we can go through the process and look at the forecasting information here. So typically some of the key information that we want to gather is when this company is likely to make a decision. The rating tends to relate to primarily of how much contact we're having with this particular company. So, for example, if we're dealing with them on a day-to-day basis, pretty much at this point, we'd consider that hot. Warm, if you're dealing with them once or twice, maybe a week. Cold, 2-3 weeks or less often than that. The probabilities are here primarily to register on a percentage scale of how likely and how far into our sales process this is. It's something that's used by a lot of companies for a couple of good reasons. It's to give us an ability to provide a monetary focus on the revenue and the probability to get a feeling for the strength of our pipeline. So if you were to say that we have a 10% or a 20% opportunity, that would relate to us that we've just qualified this, and if it's worth $20,000, for example, then we would be able to take that multiplied by 0.2 to give us a total dollar, which gives us a feeling for how strong our pipeline is, which I'll show you when I come into the reporting in a little bit. So on the other side here, when we're looking at the revenue side, you have two options in the system where you can either use what's called user provided or system calculated pricing. Now, for you to be able to use the quotes, orders, and invoices, it is mandatory required for you to use what's called system calculated pricing here. If your process is a little bit simpler and quicker and you just want to put in the actual dollars, then you use what's called user-provided pricing, which then doesn't allow you to produce quotes from the system. So it depends on the complexity of your sales process, which is the better one for you. In this particular case, we're going to take the system calculated process view because we want to show off the capabilities in that area as well. So in this case, you select a price list. In this case, I've created one called retail, so I'll just make a selection on that. Before we're able actually selecting a product or adding a product against here, we will need to actually save our record, so we can actually add that. So from within here, I can now go and add a product against this sales opportunity. So in this place, it's just going to be a consulting one, so I'm just going to use what's called a writing product. The idea with these areas is that you can either import a full price list with pricing and have them at different price levels. So retail being a standard list that we used in our selection, but you could also have special custom discount wholesale pricing versus retail and the like. On top of that, when you actually go in and specifying the actual products, when you're attaching them to the opportunity, you can either choose to use something information from your price list, or to use what's called write-in products, which is just basically you entering in the line items because you need more flexibility. So I'll put in training, for example, here. I'll put it in maybe $1,000, and they want 2 days of that. Put in the tax of 100, and we're all done. You can add multiple lines in here, and you can combine it. So in this case, we can see that we've added our write-in product in here. If there's a price change, etc., you can actually go into the system and actually recalculate the opportunity based on those changes. So it's a way that you can easily manage that process. Now, let's say that we're going through the process and we want to actually create a quote from this. Then we'd go down to the quotes area in here and say we're going to add a new quote. Now, as I pointed out before, this is not a prescriptive path. You could start straight away generating a quote and adding those product lines that I just did before. But if you do it this way, it will automatically populate the fields from the preceding steps for us here. If you want to give a discount in here for the quote, etc., you can go through this. It's all fairly self-explanatory. Now, in here, you have a couple of options at your disposal. You can use, you can activate the quote. So currently this quote is in a draft state, but when you activate it, that then becomes an active quote for the customer. So if you have due dates and things like that, you can track it, etc. If you wanted to produce a quote straight from the screen without doing that, you can do that. But typically, we want to activate a quote so that we can see that it gives it a proper quote ID here, and it locks down the pricing for us. Now, at this point, I would want to run a report for this quote from the system, which will take the information from what we captured before and automatically put that information into this form that we then can print into a Word document. So we'll just let that load for a second. Billing address, all that kind of information can also be populated in here. So as you can see in here, you got the option of saving this as an Excel file, a Word document, etc., to integrate it with other quoting procedures that you might have, or you can just print it straight from within here. Either way, you have a quote ID, etc. Should you need to revise the quote, let's say they don't agree with it, you need to provide a further discount to close the deal, we have the option to revise the actual quote from within here. And if you do, you're now creating a revision in the system. So, but it opens up you for a $200 discount, for example, or a percentage discount, etc. So you can then reissue this quote with the updated information. So we can produce this again and secondly reprint it here. If the customer is happy at this point, or and want to go ahead and create a sales order from this, we can do that straight from within here. You could also go and do that directly from within the orders or invoicing area, obviously, because the system allows you to be very flexible in that process. So if I go to create an order, at this point, as soon as we have an order, we would say that this would conclude the sales process here. So closing the opportunity would be assumed, setting up the dates here, putting the actual revenue, or you can grab it from the quote, which I typically recommend here. You also have the opportunity of leaving the opportunity unupdated in case you need to do some more work in there to before you close it off. So at this point, the quote now changes from being an active quote to being a one quote. All the other quotes will be disabled at this point. So following the process through, it takes all the information from the previous steps and areas and brings it across into the order area in the system. And again, you can use an order form from the templates in the system, but you can also use your own forms using mail merge capabilities here. So at this point, you can then go through the process of fulfilling the order, i.e. it's been delivered and sent off. and you can also, from this point, generate an invoice to the customer from within here. So we typically we probably issue the invoice first before we go through and fulfill the order. So in this case, once we have an invoice in the system, you can then illustrate saying that this is an active invoice. So we provided the customer with an invoice. It automatically creates an invoice ID, and as soon as they've paid it, we'll go back into the invoice and click Paid, and the invoice has been either completed or partially completed. It moves from being an invoice that's active to being an invoice that now has gone through to be paid. Should you need to cancel it for any reason, you can do this up here. We should point out at this point that these are the areas, especially with the invoicing, where you can potentially integrate with other third-party software such as Xero or MYOB, for which eSaver can help you as well. So that has taken us through the entire process in this case, in terms of working with an opportunity from the lead stage all the way to a closed opportunity. So I'm just going to close off. As you can see here, it already has been closed, and it just hasn't refreshed from within the screen here. Okay, so that's clearly an important aspect. Now, if we, in terms of working with our opportunities from start to finish. Now, if we go in and start looking at the process that we have in terms of being able to manage opportunities from a sales management point of view a little bit more, what we have is the ability to grab this information, for example, and bring it into Excel spreadsheets to make life a little bit easier for us. So if I wanted to apply the notion that I was discussing briefly before about being able to create a great feeling about the strength of our pipeline, if I bring across my open opportunity into an Excel spreadsheet by using the integration here, I'll bring the data across, I'll open up this particular information, and we have the data brought across. Now, it's a little bit incomplete here, but the general idea is sound. The idea here is that if you were to take the revenue and probability and treat it as a percentage of it, then what we have is the ability to see the strength of our pipeline. So if I was to take the one column multiplied by the other, so 100, oops, wrong order. Take 150,000 multiplied by 75% and then divide that by 100. Then we're seeing the relative strength of our pipeline. And if you do a sum on this, a lot of sales managers tend to like using this to get a feel for what their estimated revenue is in the process. Obviously, if you don't have all the information here, it's not going to add that much value, so it's important to manage your pipeline well in this case. So this is one tool that a lot of sales managers like using to get a relative strength measure of their pipeline. So as you could see, all we had to do was to bring the data across to Excel, do a quick formula in here to get a good feel for that. So using Excel as a starting point, it can be a handy thing. Now, when we're looking at our opportunities, and note that we're still staying within the Outlook interface, I have the ability to actually work with charts in the main screen here. So what we saw in our last session was that you had these inline charts available for you in most areas. And this is also true when it comes to the sales pipeline management area. So when we're looking at our data, what you'll see in the inline charts section is the ability to see the pipeline, the sales leaderboard, and the like. So a lot of information that's available there. From a sales management point of view, this is one of the key tools where we're looking at where are we at, what's the strength of our pipeline, what have we got sitting in the different components of our pipeline. So what are we qualifying, what are we closing, etc. And a very good tool in the system is to have the capability of making a selection in the screen using the chart and having that information drilled down in real time in our screen on the right in here. So getting a good feel for what opportunities are sitting and who's looking after them. And this can be done both in an individual basis or as a team basis. Drilling into this information is also possible through using the drop-down field selector in here. So if I want to change and look at the data slightly differently to get the breakdown in a different graph, I'm now drilling into the qualifying stage by staying in a graphical fashion in real time, and we can see the split out here. Sometimes seeing the information in a graphical fashion rather than through numbers makes it show more depth of information. Now, when you combine this with looking at changing views in the system, looking at analyzing the lost opportunities, for example, that will always help you evaluate your sales pipeline in a better and a more in-depth fashion. So that's the way we do sort of day-to-day analysis, working with different views in the system, creating your own views, which we'll cover in a different session, etc. from within here. Now, if you're looking at proper sales management and seeing this in an overview screen, we have a number of dashboards available out of the box for us to be able to track this. So when you select your dashboard either through the web interface or through Outlook, it brings up a couple of different options for dashboards. So using the view selector at the top, you can see that there's a couple of pre-selected or pre-created sales-related dashboards in the system. So should we want to see how we're progressing towards our targets, etc., and this focus here is on a personal salesperson level, but you could create a dashboard that covers for the team, so you can then have different territories for different regions, etc. So you can see what kind of sales activity is being generated elsewhere. You can see a combination of information here for general performance in terms of your sales force and the quality of the opportunities. You can see in this case there's a heavy focus on this one, so we hope we're able to close this one down successfully. Also, this is where you're able to see percentage achieved and proper goal tracking in Dynamics CRM. So what you see here is the actual chart that shows how this particular salesperson is tracking towards their goal for April. So you can set up goals in the system, which I'll show you in a minute, but this is where you actually see this resulting. So we have a chart here that it currently shows us the percentage achieved, and looking at for the salesperson, how are they tracking towards that in the season. It's the last day of the month, so you would hope that the salesperson has reached 100% of the goal, which in this case you can see the salesperson has successfully done. Now, a great thing with the goals that are created within Dynamics CRM is that they are extremely flexible and can be tailored for more than one requirement. So if I go in and looking at the system from within the system where we generate the goals, we will be able to see them where we've actually put them into a different area that from what you would see in your system right now. All right. So we moved them in here because we tend to view them as being more relevant in the system administration area here. So the particular goal that I created that we just looked at up here, which is the April goal, was created from within this screen. To open up an existing goal is a good way to learn how this side of the system actually operates and some of the options that are available. So when you're looking at setting a goal for a salesperson or a sales team, you can set up goals that are based for a specific owner, and this can be either a user or an actual team in the system. The type of goal metrics, i.e. what we're trying to measure here, doesn't have to be monetary set. So in this case, out of the box, you can see the revenue is a typical goal. So we're saying revenue is a closed opportunities and the actual revenue generated. But if you're in the sales area, in a customer service area, then it could be the number of cases closed. But you can also, from a sales point of view, which a lot of sales managers do, create goals that are based on customer visits. So you could set up saying you've got to make X calls per week or X visits per week, and you could set up a completely different target in that area. It's going a little bit more in depth. There's probably something that we could have a one-on-one chat on about if that's something you'd like to learn more about. Also, the ability to customize period or using the fiscal period set up in the business unit gives great flexibility where you can either set them up using the defaults from the system or to set up your own period. So that gives you a chance to set these up very, very flexible. Once you set the target up, and again this depends on the goals in the system, this will automatically then be the basis. So whenever you create a goal in here, you set them up for the person so they can have different targets depending on the territory, etc. And you can also vary it over the different periods to set a more aggressive targets towards the end of the financial year if that's when you're expecting to close a majority of your sales, to set reasonable expectations in the sales cycle perhaps. So in terms of setting these up, that's a very, very quick overview for you in this area. So in terms of the general capabilities in the system for the sales tracking and management, they are a couple of the key components. Some of the things that we applied in our last session around working with tasks and accounts and in contacts still apply to a great extent here. And one particular area that I'd like to point out to you is for when you're working with your accounts in a day-to-day fashion, is the ability to be able to see what's actually going on in real time with the people and in the particular accounts. I'm going to change across here to my web browser version just to be able to illustrate the eSavvy account viewer. So when you're working with an account or a contact, sometimes you want to be able to get a quick overview of all the communication that's been going on for this particular company, and you don't want to have to drill into all the information. So if you go in and here, in this particular case, looking at the different types of communication that's going on, for you to see what's happening in general, looking at an account, see who are the different people within the account, what opportunities we currently have available for them and the people. The eSavvy account viewer gives you quick access to all that information from within one handy screen. So you can see it's quick. You don't have to wait for the information to load. You can see what's going on, and it has the ability to show you more information about all the information that's going on. And when working with the opportunities, and clicking and selecting one of these then actually opens up the record. So it's instant access and it's quick to work with. Also, the areas that we looked at in our previous sessions from within our opportunities and leads in regards to the different people and accounts still apply here. So when it comes to working and creating, working with postcodes and the like from within opportunities and accounts, through using eSavvy solutions, for example, you have the ability to integrate that nicely with everything. So what we were talking about before here regarding using the postcode searches and the kind of business information that we have available against accounts, it still forms an important point in the sales process. So when we're looking at this and sort of to surmise, I guess, here is when you come back in and looking at the person's information here. So if we come back and looking at Kelvin's details and opening the details up, when I bring up this summary information here, we're then able to see that we worked with the details, we got all this under control, and you can then go back and use this as the starting point. Obviously, the key thing with this is looking at it from a longer term perspective with the customer. So if we go in and look at KJ Ross, the actual account, then we're able to see the history of all the tasks that have been carried out in the process, orders generated as part of the process here, and the total value of the customers. So all the opportunities that we've created historically, when we're going and looking at this from an account point of view, is then all available for us here to see, so that when you come back in to do another deal with this customer later on, we have all that history accessible in real time. Same here with what we're talking about in being able to see the emails for the accounts and all the activities that have been going on. So tracks everything that we've done in the system, all the activities that we're meant to be following through on, and the quotes opportunity and the closing of the opportunity. All this information is tracked here for you in the longer term in the system. So I think that is a good way of summarizing the sales module in the system. The one area we haven't covered so far is in terms of the mobility. So let me very quickly tell you a little bit about the capabilities here. When we're using CRM online on a mobile device, such as an iPhone, an iPad, etc., you have a couple of different options available to you. Using the built-in Mobile Express interface is accessible by merely using your normal address, as I'm doing here, adding a /m towards the end of it, and hitting enter. So if you have an iPhone, for example, and using the Safari web browser in there, the screen would typically look something along these lines. Gives you the full capabilities of accessing your account when you have an internet connection, and drill into the information, viewing the opportunities for an account, and even going into the details in further notes and further details, so you can see what's going on here. And you can even go to the point of actually editing a lot of this information. Same thing with viewing the opportunities here. I can look at it from the opportunity side. You can edit your opportunity, update the details while on the road. So this is the capability available for every mobile device, as long as they have a HTML4 capable web browser on it. Now, to get the most out of it and to use it to its full capability, we typically suggest using something like a Windows based tablet for mobility, because it allows you to use the full Outlook interface. And the full Outlook interface, as we know here, allows you to integrate your emails in your CRM in the same interface. But on top of that, actually the actual system has the capability of going into what's called offline mode in here. So if you have it on a mobile device like a Windows-based tablet, so the Windows 8 tablets that are likely to come out in the near future, then you have the ability to go into offline mode, work without having an internet connection, and then synchronize when you come back in and on to an internet connection, and it will automatically synchronize the details as well. Microsoft has also provided, will be providing in the coming weeks, a new interface which is an additional component for your iPads, where you have the ability to use is an interface quite similar to what you see here on an iPad with offline capabilities. And that is an additional charge, which on a salesperson per salesperson basis, but they can use it on up to 3 different devices. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the capability, and Microsoft is covering pretty much every scenario that you can imagine in that area. So I think in terms of looking at this from a salesperson's point of view, I hope you can see that it's got all the capabilities required for the day-to-day workings for a salesperson, as well as for a sales manager to be able to manage their sales staff successfully. I'll now go over and look at the questions that we had so far, so let's just see how we go. Okay. So I have a question from Sam. Does there have to be an existing contact or to track an email, or is it automatically added? Yes, the simple answer is that you don't need to have an existing contact to track an email. It does, when you actually select the person in the list, it will actually generate that from the information provided. So if I was to select any person in the list here and click on them and go track in CRM, that is when it establishes a link and creates the record in CRM at that point, and allows you to start tracking communications between that person at that point. So it's a simple one-step process where you just select the person, click track, and that will automatically create them in CRM for you. I don't have any other questions, so if anyone has any, I've taken you all off mute at the moment, so yeah. Tracking emails over IMAP, yes, from Paul. Yeah, that's right. We'll talk about that individually in our one-on-one session, Paul, because it is a little bit more of a technical question. The key thing with the integration to Outlook is that you need to use the default email address here. So if you've got a more advanced setup for your emails, the key thing is to know that it's got to rely on this one here. There's some technical areas in there that needs to be considered, but for a lot of users, the out-of-the-box capabilities there, if you're running a simple setup, so to speak, that way, it tends to be selecting the main default email account, and off you go, like I've done in this session here today. So unless, so Paul, you and I will have a session for later on for this. So unless anyone else has any other questions, I hope today's session has been of use to you and that you've seen a little bit of the capabilities of the sales module. Again, if you have any other questions that you would like to ask us that we haven't covered here, and if that comes up over the coming days, please send me or us an email here, and we'll be happy to answer them to our best of our ability. Otherwise, I would just like to quickly plug our next session coming up, which is going to be focused around tailoring and reporting. So next session is going to be around how you can tailor your forms, how you can build charts and views in the system to personalize the system more so, it's going to be quite an exciting session, I think. It might not sound that exciting, but in terms of turning the system into something that's uniquely your organization, putting your flavor on it, that session is going to add a lot of value to it, to your process, and getting you seeing how this system is going to be labeled the way you need it and have the kind of information you need where it doesn't need it out of the box. Okay, thank you guys very much for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. We'll try to make it for next Monday at 11:30 as well, try to keep it to it, and we will do our best to get these things up on the links up for you. We've had a little bit of a slowdown in this area. Just got to get the things edited and loaded up properly, so but do be patient, and we look forward to seeing you shortly. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic day. Yes.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
All right, bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.